ball, and that being the most important thing in a given season, in a given time of life. And that is the thing that cannot fall, right? And that glass ball can change from season to season. So in one season, it may be super important that you focus on family. And so that is the thing where maybe work takes more of a backseat. Maybe, your personal hobbies take more of a backseat, and it is like all hands on deck for family. In another season, work may be the glass ball.
Hey, it's Breaking Barriers, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging podcast. We're here for real talk. We're not afraid to go there. And we want you to come away emboldened and energized to take action and make change.
We believe our diversity, our differences, when joined together by a common set of ideals, makes us stronger.
When I set out to help someone, it is my intention to do just that. I'm not trying to do anything other than meet somebody at their humanity.
Your world has changed, but your dreams shouldn't have to. That's why Kirkwood is your next best step. With affordable, flexible, and close-to-home options, now's a great time to start or finish your Kirkwood degree. Learn more at kirkwood.edu/findyourfuture. Displaced or discouraged at work? Kirkwood can help you learn a new skill or totally reinvent yourself for a brand new career. With so many flexible and affordable options, you can get back on track fast. Learn more at kirkwood.edu/findyourfuture.
All right, what's happening? What's happening, world? What's happening? Welcome back to another episode of Top Ranks Breaking Barriers, the DEIMB podcast, brought to you by 5-Star presenting sponsor Kirkwood Community College and our silver sponsor PG Cares. We appreciate their support. I'm your host, Anthony Arrington, joined by my homie and my friend, Nick Ford, and my homegirl and my other co-partner, Joy Briscoe. What's up, y'all? How you doing?
Happy Friday. Well, I don't know when this airs.
It's a Friday when we're recording it. So
it is Friday. So we are celebrating and walking in that. Happy Friday to everybody listening, and especially to our guest today.
Yeah. We're about to get into it. Who we got, Joy? Who we got today?
Well, I'm so excited. We have Desiree Coleman and Desiree Coleman Fry, because as we were talking off camera, Desiree is married now, but Desiree Coleman Fry helps women live abundantly. She's been featured in the New York Times, Business Insider, Blavity, and PBS, and was named one of the Hive's 2020 top diversity and inclusion leaders of North America. As a graduate of LinkedIn's prestigious Creator Accelerator program, she centers working moms and offers resources to help moms balance work, wellness, and womanhood. And I can't wait till we dive into that because I need that help. But with a following of 40K on the platform, Desiree helps mothers live abundantly, love their babies, and level up in their career. As a diversity, equity, and inclusion executive, Desiree advocates for workplace equity and is the recipient of the 2022 DNI Champion Award from Career Mastered and the 2019 Rising Star and DNI Award from Investment News. She holds a Master's of Public Administration from Syracuse University, is a Loyola Academy trustee, and resides in St. Louis, Missouri, where my mother's family is originally from. With her husband, yes, that's right, with her husband and 4 children. Desiree, welcome. I've been so excited to have you. I don't know if you remember a few years ago, we reached out and we had to do something virtually. And I can't wait till we actually have you in person. But for now, this is going to have to suffice. Me and my partners are so excited to talk to you today. And just how do you do all of these things? How are you a DEI practitioner, advancing equity, but also making sure you make space and create areas for working moms? So I'm so excited to dive back in. But my first question is around something you recently posted that I was just really intrigued by, and that is that concept of the concrete ceiling. Can you explain what the concrete ceiling is for our listeners? And what do you say when people say there's no such thing, or we're not there anymore? We had a Black president, so there's no concrete ceiling. What do you say to those people?
Okay, so we going there. Okay, first of all, thank you for having me. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. And yes, Joy, I definitely remember the panel that we were on together, and Anthony and I have kept in touch over the years. So it is a pleasure, and so glad to meet your other co-hosts today. So thank you for having me. As you were reading my bio, y'all were like making me blush, but really excited to be here. So I'll answer your first question, the concrete ceiling. I have been in this really reflective place seeking to learn and grow. One of my colleagues called it me search, which is in the psychology profession, research that you do about yourself. And it made me feel so seen because I am always reading and trying to understand the experiences of other women of color. And I came across a really great article that was in Sanford Social Innovation Review. And I want to give some credit to the author, so I'm going to find their name, but essentially they were talking about this concept of a concrete ceiling, which is an impenetrable wall that women of color face. And many of us have heard of the glass ceiling, which is this sort of perceived barrier that women come up against in the workplace. And so we've talked about shattering the glass ceiling and creating opportunities for women to be the first and really pushing past the paradigms that we have known in the past. But the idea of a concrete ceiling really piqued my interest because it takes into account the additional barriers that women of color face in the workplace. So the microaggressions, the feeling excluded, the having to tone police themselves, having to be hyper vigilant around what other people are thinking of them. And it really just sort of outlines the additional hurdles and the challenges that women of color will face in the workplace. So thank you for bringing that up.
Interesting. I hadn't heard of that. I'm thinking it sounds like it's something impossible, like Black women can't break through. And I'm like, no, we ain't having that.
I mean, I appreciate, right? I appreciate the sentiment, but it really does start to paint the picture that you think about who enters the workplace. Women and men enter in pretty comparable rates. But as you think about a pyramid where the higher you go, the less women that you see and the less women of color that you see. I did see a recent statistic, and I want to say maybe Tashonda Brown Duckett posted it, that CEOs are like, CEOs are women CEOs are like 10% for like the first time ever in history, according to something that Fortune recently put out. So that's wonderful, but we still have a long way to go. I admire your hope though, Anthony.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I gotta have
I
hope.
love that whole concept because I mean, our whole thing is about breaking barriers, right? It's just like, how do we get through those? And so what advice would you have for people hitting that concrete ceiling?
Whew. It's hard. It's so hard. There are all of these things that I've been reading lately around like the punishment gap, which highlights the ways that people of color and people from other marginalized identities are punished more harshly for making the same mistakes. And looking at how, you hear concepts called like the broken rung, which is that first promotion that would really set your career on a trajectory. When a woman or a person of color misses it, it really does create this seismic gap that makes it really hard for them to catch up to their counterparts. And so for those who are feeling it, I think naming it and giving language to what they are experiencing is so critical so that you can know, like, it's not you, it's actually the environment that is creating those feelings, those experiences. So I think normalizing it is so important. There's this really great HBR article that says, stop telling women they have imposter syndrome. I know Jodi Ann Burry is one of the authors, and I'm gonna find the name of the other author, but it's the concept that we put the onus on women to say like, oh, don't feel like you can't do things. Don't feel like you have to diminish yourself. Don't feel that, you can't, but really, why do people feel that way? Mm-hmm. It's likely because the environment is not welcoming, right? Yeah. The environment has made them feel that way. And so we put the onus on the person who is most impacted rather than assessing what about the environment is making people feel like they can't achieve. What about the environment is making people feel silent? So
we talk a lot about that. And we talk about
target the impactor, not the impacted.
Yeah. Or the root cause, right? We talk about the issue, right? But we're not dealing with the root cause of why that person feels that way. One thing.
Not only that, Anthony, but also the trauma of continuing to try to have the impacted address it. I mean,
right.
it's just compounding. And it's just like, at some point it needs to go the other way.
Yeah. It's your problem.
Right.
It's a you problem.
Right. It's a you. It's very much a you problem.
It's very much a you problem. Not
One
a
thing
us
I like,
problem.
Desiree, again, we met a few years back, obviously, and we've kept in touch over the years. But I got to be honest, we talk about in this space bringing our whole selves to work, and you do that online, and you're a social influencer, obviously. But one thing I didn't know about you until maybe a year ago is that, and you probably remember, I didn't know you were in a biracial marriage. Yeah. And when you posted that, I think three things kind of hit me. First thing, I was like, oh, cool, because I'm in a biracial marriage. I was like, that's cool. Me too, right? Then I thought, gosh, I knew she had leverage in this space, but her lived experience, boy, she can really walk the walk. She's got this lived experience. She even has more leverage. And then I kind of wondered, how has life been as a black woman with a white husband, in this challenging and doing this work we do. So I kind of got two questions, and I'll just ask one because I don't hog the time. But how has life been? How's the life of a biracial family been for you personally and professionally? How has that helped you in this space?
My husband and I have a running joke that I am living out my DEI values in our relationship. And so, one thing I appreciate about him, okay, I found the name of the author. It took me forever. Nope, psych. I'll come back, but I will give you the name and I'll answer your question first. It's really interesting. I will say personally, I had never dated interracially. So this is not so it's new to me. It's all sort of a new process and journey. And so when I didn't know my now husband for years. But so also when we started dating, I was like, okay, I have a series of tests so I can see, how this is going to work. Do Black Lives Matter? And he was like, yeah, I got to sign my phone.
I love that. I love that. You're like, okay, check.
Check. Yep.
Right? Because I need to know. So, and so it's been really, it's been a really interesting personal journey for myself. I never saw myself being in an interracial relationship, but now that I'm married to Jay, I so see how our way of approaching life, our desire for justice, just aligns. And so actually the work that I do every day, that is one of the things that kind of brought us together. And so we are regularly talking about issues of injustice and oppression. For our little date night last night, we watched the 1619 Project and, just really which shout out if you have not watched it, run to Hulu and watch it.
Yeah.
So Nicole is a good friend of mine. So I've been texting her again.
Who's a good friend?
Nicole's from Waterloo.
She's from Waterloo.
Yeah, she's from our city. So
you're classmates, aren't you?
Yeah, we were classmates. Although I joke with her because she's a year or two older than I'm always like, I don't think I was in school when you got in there. Shut up, Joy.
Yeah.
But we founded her 1619 Freedom School here in Waterloo. So she's the president and we're the founder. So I'm we are so proud. We could not be more proud of you. Literally.
First of all, I love how you just dropped, me and Nicole are just, and I'm that's what I was I'm sorry, what? Rewind, who?
We're trying to leverage that. Nicole, if you're listening, we want you next for a guest.
And then bring Oprah with you.
Yeah.
Yes. And let me just be in the background, just taking notes because he is just brilliant. Let me just fangirl real quick because I first became acquainted with her when she did this New York Times Magazine article about choosing whether or not to send her child to the neighborhood school versus, a different school. And I'm sure so many other parents have grappled with that choice of you want the absolute best for your child and you recognize that the consequences of making different decisions. So I became a fan way, way, way back in the day because I just appreciated her lens and being able to so clearly articulate how all of these issues of injustice kind of interconnect.
Yeah.
She still lives in Brooklyn too. Unfortunately, she gets mail that threatens. But she's I live in Brooklyn. So
yeah.
Threaten every time I walk outside.
Short walk over, long walk back. Okay.
Well, now I appreciate you answering that question, Desiree. Because I've been curious about how life has been and how it's impacted you professionally and personally. I know for me, I've been with my wife for 36 years, something like that. We've been married for almost 25. And we've gone through a lot of phases in our life, personally and professionally, as a biracial marriage. And we've got biracial kids now. But, I can say that it's given me leverage in this space because I get to knock down the conversation that I'm a racist. That those things go, you can't have those conversations with me. So it does give me leverage to start conversations. I never thought of, obviously that wasn't on my mind when I started dating her, but I'm just saying. So I just kind of wanted to know, you've grown so much, and it's nice to hear, kind of how you've leveraged that and that you all met in that space. So thanks for sharing that.
So I've got a couple questions for you. One, you kind of already approached was the punishment gap. So I'm pivoting here. I'm pivoting midstream. I also read something you were talking about self-editing and talk about, Olympics, and the way you termed it was mental Olympics. And can you tell us more about that and what your mindset was when you wrote that? And then my last question is, how do you do all this as a mom to 4 kids? Because I've got 3 and they're out now, and 1 granddaughter, and just the granddaughter comes to visit and I'm done after an hour or so.
Okay. I'm sorry for my one-track mind.
Yep.
Hanei Khosrowshahi is the author of The Concrete Ceiling. So if you all have a chance to go read it, I just wanted to shout out their work because it really was pivotal in forming my thinking.
And you've got a great book list out there anyway. So
yes, I need to compile one. I did. I posted one for MLK. I posted one for MLK. There are so many, and it was hard to narrow it down. But how do I do it all? I do it all. I feel like I am constantly recalibrating. I think for me, figuring out how to have a little bit of time for myself and how to give my family the best is those are the most important things to me. And then, speaking, writing, those are passion things, but they also help me learn, grow, understand. So I just do what I can.
Do you feel like too, so I'm wondering, do you follow? Because in my mind, me and you we talk all the time, right?
Okay.
And so, hey girl. So do you follow Felicia Butterfield? That she did. She was the president of the Recording Academy, and she's the diversity lead for Google now.
Yep.
I have this collection of brilliant women who are DEI practitioners. So I'm sure that I do.
I'm sure she's in there. She talked about that, the understanding of being a woman and being a professional woman and having this image that there's somehow this magical equation that has this work-life balance. And she's like, it doesn't exist. I miss PTO meetings. You just kind of have to figure out what your groove is. And sometime your groove will be that I'm able to be this super engaged mom. And sometimes your groove will be, I maybe haven't baked cookies in a year for whatever have you, right? And so she's like, and you have to get to a place where you can give up the guilt of that, because some of that over expectation never was healthy for us anyway. So leading into Nick's question about how do you give up the guilt of that, of all the things that you do? How do you give up the guilt and just say, I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to take care of my wellness. Not only am I going to take care of my wellness, but I'm going to build a community that encourages other women to do it as well. Right. In addition to being a DEI practitioner.
Thank you.
Not to balance.
I feel like I feel like you're throwing me a softball to say.
Don't worry, I'll throw the hard balls at you.
That's why we friends. Thank you, girl. To say that I do have a couple of communities that really focuses on this idea of helping women focus on self-care, self-empowerment, and self-love. And so Women Work Well. We do a live chat for working moms. Really, I think the things that I do are an expression of who I am, right? So, curating conversations for working moms, that's because motherhood can be isolating. Motherhood can be challenging. It can be draining. And so I just want to create a space where people can come and let their hair down and ask the questions and share the life hacks. So that is an extension. I regularly host those. So go to my website, DesireeSColeman.com. That's DesireeSColeman.com. You see that commercial to find out more about these upcoming things. But I would say and I don't know who to give credit to, but I've heard people talk about a glass ball, and that being the most important thing in a given season, in a given time of life. And that is the thing that cannot fall, right? And that glass ball can change from season to season. So in one season, it may be super important that you focus on family. And so that is the thing where maybe work takes more of a backseat. Maybe, your personal hobbies take more of a backseat, and it is like all hands on deck for family. In another season, work may be the glass ball, and work may be demanding more of you, and work may be requiring you to show up differently, which may mean you have to lean on your village to support your kiddos, or you have to have tough conversations with your partner to say, hey, this is what I need in this season to be able to devote more time. And then in other seasons, maybe your personal passion. So whether that's going back to school or blogging or starting a whole podcast, I see y'all, shout out, you're able to do those things, but the other balls, things may take a back seat, but that glass ball is going to be the one thing that you're focused on. And so I think recognizing that I can't do it all. Right? I can't do it all. And I don't even try. So when you're like, how do you do it all? I'm like, do I? I don't know. Because I don't. Right. I do what I can. And I realize that in different seasons, what I can do changes and shifts. So there have been seasons. I'm a creative. I was that kid like cutting and creating things and sewing and drawing and dancing. So part of writing, part of reading is that creative outlet for me. And there are times when I can't do that as much as I would like, but I know it's because I'm focusing on the most important thing. And so I just think not expecting yourself to be able to do it all and recognizing that life is about seasons. Yeah. That has been what's helped me to keep things in perspective.
So something like being in the moment, kind of just being in that moment and realizing that you can't have multiple moments at the same time.
I'm waiting to know when the how-to book's coming out.
Hey, I was reading an interview you did when you first started your recent your job, and you were having some conversations with an interviewer, and something you said, a couple of things you said stood out to me, but one of the things you said that intrigued me, you said, I believe that each employee in the organization is a culture keeper. Elaborate on that. What do you mean by a culture keeper?
Y'all are making me blush, like the fact that y'all have
stalked you.
Y'all gone to the archives, right?
Yes. We want to have we research our guests. We don't just come on. We want to talk to y'all.
I love it. So it's this idea that we can establish organizational norms, or we can say these are the things that are important to us, so we can articulate our values or the core expectations of leaders around DEI, right? And it's not up to the DEI person to keep that going, right? It's not up to the employee resource groups to keep that going. It is literally up to everyone. And it's sort of creating the recognition that each of us, through our interactions with other people, are going to leave people with a feeling each day. And that feeling may be like, wow, this is such a collegial place, or wow, this is such an innovative place, or wow, this is a place that made me feel dismissed, or wow, this place really minimized my voice. And so the idea of being a culture keeper is that each of us, how we interact, how we show up, how we are silent, and how we are allies for other creates our culture. Right? Yes. It's not a single individual. It's this collective set of actions, intentions that create the culture either we want or we don't want. And so I just try to impress upon people that, I can't do my work as a DEI practitioner as like, like I am leading the charge. I am setting the table. I am articulating a vision, and it's going to take all of us to really create the culture we want to see.
Yeah. Let me tail in off of your analogy there. You're setting the table, you're creating the culture, but I'm not going to feed you. You have to eat yourself. That's about that. I like that. And it really speaks to the work that we all do as well when we talk about culture, because it's about, you said the word collective, and I know our ears perked up because we talk a lot about collective regard. So really, really like to hear that.
But it still amazes me too, like following folks, individuals like Desiree or other people on LinkedIn, Facebook, how many people that, especially that look like me, are like, well, can you explain that in detail and give me all the information and something they could find on Google in 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's got to be exhausting. But
again, for the people in the back, say it one more time.
I mean, it's just like,
yeah, that's real talk. Like, when is Desiree, I guess in your world, when is a point where you decide to tell a client or a friend or an organization, you know what, you've asked me enough questions. You're not writing enough checks to me, first of all.
Yeah. Come on. No
but you're asking me. You asked me enough questions. Tell me what you have done.
Right.
Do you get to that point with your clients or your friends or colleagues where you have to tell them, look, you need to go learn for yourself. Quit asking me questions. Or how do you deal with that? It's a good question.
Well, I am always the first to say that, like, being in this space is emotional labor, right? I was having a conversation with a colleague, like, as I read, I have a collection of books on rotation, and a lot of the books I read are heavy. So then I have to counterbalance those books with something light. But two of the heavy books that I'm reading right now, The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee. Mm-hmm. So good. It is so good. And the subtitle is How Racism Costs Us All. And so listening to all of these historical accounts of instances of racial injustice, racial intolerance, racial indifference, and grappling with that and understanding how that fits into present day context and the ramifications of those things is heavy, right? As I hold space for people to share their experience or to alert me to a challenge that they're having, that is emotional labor. As I set the table and allow people to learn, engage, and maybe create opportunities for discussion, that is emotional labor. So I always try to remind people that there's a cost. Like, if you are truly being effective at this work, you're constantly reading. You are hearing about the atrocities that are happening in the world, and the shootings and the targeting and the discrimination. And so grappling with that is tough. So I do always remind people that Google is your friend, and that you can find resources, podcasts, articles, but I know every individual who's a DEI practitioner has a different way that they can show up, right? Mm-hmm. The way that I choose to show up, I want to spark a conversation. Like, I welcome challenging questions. And so I try to, that's part of the reason why I share my thought leadership, because I want people to say, like, I didn't know that, or Yeah. And so those are that's part of what I want to do. However, right, I do also encourage people, like, oh, here's another great resource, or if you want to learn more here, go here.
Yeah.
To try to encourage people to do their own work, because I do think that's important. Yeah.
Well, it's great to spark it, but at some point they got to light their own fire too. It's like,
one of my cousins, who is you guys met her, she's a dynamic women's wellness person too. Desiree, I have to connect you guys. Okay. And the way she shapes it when she talks to people, is she says, like, you get to do your own work. Like, you get, like, you have you're here another day because you have the honor of helping make not only the world better around you, but doing that, like, through self-reflection as well. Or I love when you said, I actually wrote it down, when you said doing your own me search, right? Like, you get to do your own me search to make you a better place and show up more abundantly in the world. So like that. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I love that.
Right.
And this is.
Do we have a listener question? Do we have one today? Did we get a listener question? We usually have a listener question. Did we get one today? I don't think we have one.
We did. I did have a listener question when we jumped on today, and it actually was from Katie. And Katie is out of Cedar Falls. So big shout out to you, Katie, out of Cedar Falls.
Hey, Katie.
Yes. Hey, Katie. And so Katie says, she kind of read a little bit about some of your background, and she said, what advice would you give to those who are trying to identify and work with other DEI advocates, especially if you are a person, not a person of color?
I would say, number one, we need everybody at the table. So in the same way that I, as a DEI practitioner, cannot advance DEI without everyone, it is truly going to take each of us. I had an opportunity to do a keynote for Diversity Awareness Partnership. And one of the things that I really tried to make sure resonated was this idea, like, it takes all of us, right? Because you may be in an industry that I am not. Someone else may have the ear of those who I do not. Someone else may have influence with an organization that I do not. And so I think that people should not shy away or feel like, oh my gosh, if I'm not a member of an underrepresented group, I can't be a part of it. There are folks who have positions of power who are going to need to make decisions in the best interest of creating equitable outcomes. So we need everybody, to the extent that there can be sort of some cross-sharing, some coalitions, some partnerships, some shared learning. I always think that, having a partner in this work is better. So I would say reach out, connect. I follow, to your point, Joy, I follow so many people on LinkedIn, which if you are not following me on LinkedIn, like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
I love that.
Follow Desiree Coleman Fry.
But I learned stuff, right? And I'll see people and I'll be like, ooh, I did not realize that. And so it's, finding those micro ways to connect, I think, is kind of like fuel for your tank to keep going in this work.
Yeah, I know we talk about that, and we feel blessed, Nick, Joy, and I, and that the level of physical diversity we have, and we don't shy away from that. We talk about it. If Nick as a white man can get us in front of these individuals to bring them to the table to listen, that's okay. If Anthony as a black man or Joy as a black woman, if their leverage is better, that's okay. Like, let's not shy away from that. Let's leverage it and use it.
The end goal is the same.
I love how you refer to yourself in the third person. Anyway.
Yeah.
The end goal is
follow
the key.
Anthony Arrington on LinkedIn.
Follow Anthony Arrington.
Hey.
Well, I love even that. Anthony, I remember earlier we were talking a little bit about industries that we know are out there that haven't been known historically for having people of color working for them, or at least at certain levels, right? Like you talked about that concrete ceiling, like entry point, fine, we can see you there. But as soon as we start getting management, we see less and less people of color, less and less women, maybe one, maybe two. And so, Desiree, what is something that you think, as a practitioner in the space, what is something that you are hopeful for going forward and making some change for transformation? And then even tell us something that maybe, gives you pause at night when it talks about the current DEI, state of diversity, equity, inclusion in the U.S. and more specifically in the Midwest.
Yeah. I'm hopeful for racial justice.
Come on.
I think that if we can create systems across spheres and across arenas, I think that is optimal for me. I know that I shared on LinkedIn earlier this week that Maternal Health Awareness Day was this week. And so there's a concept about health equity and disparities in healthcare and who is listened to in healthcare, right? If you think about, I mentioned earlier the punishment gap, but that extends to the educational system and, the prison to school to prison pipeline and the harsher discipline that many Black and Brown students experience. if you think about environmental justice and brownfields and communities that have been subjected to chemical waste, if you think about economic justice and communities where there has been disinvestment systematically, across every sphere that you can name, like that is what I hope for. Faith is my cornerstone. It is what enables me to stay in this work, because I think if I didn't have that as an anchor, it would be so easy to lose hope. And I think what allows me to show up every day is the expectation that the promise will be fulfilled. I often think back on historical figures who envisioned what they want. Maybe they didn't see it in their lifetime, but the change came. And so I'm like, how can I harness the power of my ancestors to keep pushing forward? You know, I don't want to invoke slavery, because Black resilience and community is so much more than that. But I think about Harriet Tubman, and did she ever like truly believe that all people will be free? She saw the path and she saw what she had to do. So she was a part of it. But with all of the atrocities and all of the economic claws literally in the backs of Black folks, with the racial indifference and hatred and lynchings, like did she truly believe that was going to be possible? And so when you see quotes by her, they say every dream begins with a dreamer, right? She had a dream. I am not going to invoke MLK, but it really is this idea of what is our expectation, right? And I think about the legacy that I want to leave. I think about, in referencing the 1619 series that's on Hulu, there was a group that was focused on voter rights, and they talked about really expecting to see equity in their lifetime. And so I guess I would just say racial justice across all spheres of life.
What keeps you up at night?
Is it racial justice too?
Is it racial?
Four kids.
Say.
Four kids.
Four kids. Nick said 4 kids.
Like I feel like sometimes they sabotage me, and they don't want me to be great. And so like, yeah, this usually, you know, my husband and I are like, here come the shenanigans, because, you know, sometimes, you know, kids are not like, okay, I'm going to do what I need to do. And I'm going to go to bed. Like there's going to be some type of theatrics. And so I'm always dealing with that. But my kids are my greatest joy. They are my why, like in the most challenging seasons of my life. Like they gave me hope and inspiration to keep moving forward. So, you know, when there are challenges, it's par for the course. And
actually, it's, you know, we all have kids here. So, you know, what advice would you give to us, you know, about, or how do you instill this work we do into your children? Or how do they perceive it? I know Joy is always having conversations with her daughter. She'll be like, yeah, me and my daughter were talking last night. I'll be like, dang, my daughter didn't call me about that.
Yeah, my kids call me if they want money.
So how do you instill this work, and how do you instill these values into your children?
It's the oldest, though. Let the record reflect.
Okay.
There's 2 that I have some work to do, and Jess.
Unfortunately, our kids probably listen to this, and you know.
How do you instill those values in your children, though, Desiree?
I would say that we regularly just talk about things that are important. Like when we're driving, I'll be like, "What do y'all notice? Look at the housing. What do y'all notice? Why do you think that is?" And then I'll use that to spark a conversation about redlining. One thing about me, I lecture. Sorry, not sorry. So I'm always like kind of like lecturing my kids.
I love it.
And so, because I want them to think critically. I want them to be world citizens. I want them also to know that the world is not black and white. I want them to know that they're part of an African diaspora that has this long lineage of greatness. And so I'll pull up, you know, my children were talking about the continent of Africa, and they had some very stereotypical notions. And so I'm like, nope, let me show you Nigeria. Let me pull it up. I'm sorry, what? Do you see these buildings? Do you see the people? Do you see the culture? So it's a personal mission for me. I know some people stumble into DEI. I got it honest. Like, I was that kid at 9 years old watching Eyes on the Prize, like watching documentaries, reading books, because it interests me, it fuels me. And so I'll find different ways to have conversations with my kid. I'll be like, hey, guess what? Did you know XYZ happened? How does that make you feel? And so I spark conversations. I want them to be knowledgeable and informed. When they were younger, it was much harder. Here in St. Louis, we lived through the murder of Michael Brown. And at that time, my kids were like preschool age. And, we had to use books to have conversations around like, this happened to this individual. This is why it likely happened to this individual. One thing I'm really careful about is framing. And so I want them to always stand in their power as young Black girls, talking about the 2 daughters that I have birthed. And I want them never to embrace some of the negative imagery, the negative self-talk, the internalized racism that can be so easily absorbed through all facets of society. So I approach it from a place of awareness and not as a place of like, woe is me. Because I want them to know what happens without it crushing their spirits and or making them feel down about themselves.
I hope our listeners got that. Talk to your children. There are opportunities. We talk to them about everything else, homework and girlfriends and boyfriends and math. And I love what I heard you say, Desiree. And this is so easy for any of us. If you're just riding in a car and you have an opportunity with your children to point out something that's educational, even doesn't matter if you're white, Black, these are opportunities to do that. So Nick, I know you and I've talked, and when your
Take our kids to where we grew up.
Right. But when Nick's dad travels, 75-year-old white man, when he travels to communities, he purposely goes places that he's not familiar with.
Yeah. He'll go to Atlanta and go to some of the worst neighborhoods just to remind himself of why he's doing what he's doing. And
some people might look at that as, it's self-fulfilling, or it's, they may perceive that differently, but if there's a sincere intent, those are good things. So glad to hear you do that with your.
And I loved hearing about the hope, because we kind of joke about it, but it's serious too. About our vision is someday we're not required to be in this line of work. It'd be nice if this job wasn't required.
Yeah.
And whether it happens in our lifetime or our kids, we got to have hope that we get there. Yeah. So I liked hearing that too. That was awesome. Yeah.
Well, Desiree, I know we're nearing the end. As we say to all of our guests, we know we could do this all day, but we're near the end of our show. So I want to make sure.
Already?
Don't go fast. Don't go fast.
It does fly.
I know. We have to have a part 2.
Yep.
Got to have a part 2.
Get you up here to visit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get you up here to visit.
Is there anything?
I'll be there this summer, potentially, because I think my daughter, we'll be in Des Moines, because I think my daughter is going to participate in Junior Olympics.
Oh,
awesome.
I'll be in Iowa.
What sport?
Track.
Nice.
Desiree, let us know. I have we have some amazing colleagues in the Des Moines area. And so I go there pretty frequently when the weather isn't bad. My partners laugh because they know it's snow.
Iowa girl that don't like to drive in bad weather, Desiree. Just
I don't like to drive in bad weather. I don't. When the weather isn't bad, we have some amazing colleagues.
We do.
I would love
it's always worth a road trip to Des Moines anyway. Yeah. So.
So let us know when you're here. We'd love to visit you. But is there anything that we haven't talked about today? Any advice for our listeners? Anything you want to talk about that we haven't mentioned?
Or what's up next for you?
Yeah, what's happening in your world?
Where's that book coming out?
Ooh, Nick, you have said it, and I heard you the first time, and I was like, and then you said it again.
Yep.
So I appreciate it. That is a goal, at some point. But I will say, what I would leave with your listeners is stay in it. We'll have the days where we feel invigorated and being agents of change and, advocating for justice. There'll be great days and there'll be challenging days. And so I hope that these conversations give a little bit of levity, give a little bit of camaraderie to help you stay in it. what's next for me? Reading, writing, one day that book. But in the meantime, I would love to stay connected with your listeners. Y'all find me at Desiree S. Coleman on all platforms. And it has been a pleasure. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Take us out, Joy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Oh, I have to get our resident selfie that I get on the...
Yes, we got to get our selfie. For our listeners, we always get selfies. So got to get that selfie in.
Love it. Love it. All right.
All right.
Wait, y'all got the selfie already? I wasn't even smiling.
Okay, let's do it again. You ready?
Wait a minute.
You getting it together too? 1, 2, 3. All right.
Okay, one more. Yes, hold on. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Got it.
All right.
All right. We're getting selfies. It's Friday, so we appreciate it. But Desiree, again, we always say we need a part 2 because we have some of the best guests doing just amazing things, and we need to stay connected in this line of work. That's one of the things when you talk about having hope. One of the ways we can continue to create hope is through connection, right, and collaboration.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us today. This is a great conversation, just learning more about some of the wonderful things that you do. Again, I told you, girl, you've been my friend from afar. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Know each other. Exactly. So, Des, just appreciate it so much today. And I know we also want to give a big shout out to our 5-star presenting sponsor, Kirkwood Community College. Nick, I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm going on my phone today because I forgot my laptop. So
okay,
please go
no
ahead.
worries, really. And we appreciate your partnership on this podcast, and also a big thanks to our Silver Diversity sponsor, PG Cares. We also want to give thanks to our friends of Breaking Barriers supporters, Community and Savings Bank, and Tyler, Link, and Barnes DDS. We love to hear from you. Hit us up and send your questions, comments, suggestions to info@toprankedtalentsolutions.com.
Yeah. Thanks to our listeners out there. We love y'all. Keep listening, like and share. Follow Desiree. When we drop the episode, please like and share. We can't do this without you, and we're doing this for you, listeners. So thank you for your time.
Somehow I didn't realize I wasn't following Desiree. I fixed that today, though. So.
Yeah, to fix that.
I don't know. I thought I had.
The cool kids are following Desiree.
That's right. Thanks, everybody. We hope all y'all take whatever you heard today, listeners. Take what you learned and break some barriers with us.
Keep breaking barriers.
Keep breaking barriers. Thanks for your time. Peace.
Advancing equity is not a one-year project. It's a generational commitment.
There are too few people in the world willing to be the domino, too few people willing to take that fall.